That was a super good throw on the moon pie. It was. Did you mean to do that?
Just frisbee it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you threw it like with your finger on the front, so it had centrifugal force. It flew like a disc. It was flat. It was easy. It was easy to catch.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good throw.
Thank you.
Thanks for the moon pie.
You're welcome.
Other than the 1994 smash hit "Take Me Out," what do you remember about Franz Ferdinand?
Take Me Out.
You remember that song? The band is called Franz Ferdinand. They
Nope.
Take Me Out. You just don't remember that one?
I don't know.
It was a big deal. It's a good song.
Franz Ferdinand, if I recall, was the guy that was assassinated to start World War One.
Perfect. Yeah. Where was he from? I'm going to eat this moon pie. Is that okay?
It's kind of bothered me, to be honest.
Why did you give me a moon pie the second we turned on the... I'll put it away.
No, it just...
No, I don't want you to be upset.
You can take smaller bites.
It's a tiny moon pie. It's shrinkflationed down to nothing. No, I stopped. No more moon pie. Do you remember where he's from?
Was he from Austria?
Nice job, man.
Okay.
When did you learn about Franz Ferdinand and his assassination at the beginning of World War I?
I want to say it was 10th grade Coach Cochran's history class, and his teaching style was interesting. He would walk in, everybody would sit down, and he would just pull out a marker, and he would write a whole whiteboard full of notes. Your job as the student was to copy the notes down and then regurgitate that on the test,
Okay.
which you don't think would be effective.
That's what I was about to say.
I'm really far away from that. I know a little bit about Franz Ferdinand.
Oh, you had it immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're much closer to the band Franz Ferdinand's 2004 hit "Take Me Out." You had nothing on that.
No.
It wasn't on the board.
No. So if I recall, do you want me to tell you what I do know?
Keep going.
My understanding is there was a parade and there was an assassin. And the assassin wanted to take out Franz Ferdinand. Why? I have no idea.
Sorry, we'll get to that.
Who he was, I have no idea.
All right.
But what I know is the assassin had a pistol, he had a poison pill, and he had some kind of grenade or bomb or something.
Dude, this is really good.
And so my understanding is the parade is going by. Maybe there were two assassins. Anyway,
There you go. Uh-huh.
the parade was going by, and like one of the assassins chickened out or something like that. So this guy rolls up, and he's like, hey, I'm going to assassinate Franz Ferdinand. And so he runs up, and he shoots him with a pistol and kills him and throws a grenade at him or something. And then he takes this poison pill, and he jumps off the bridge, and the idea is he's going to, like, drown himself after taking this poison.
Yes.
But the water was shallow, and so he ends up at the bottom of the river. He didn't take the correct amount of poison. The grenade didn't go off, and he's just laying in this muddy, what's supposed to be a river, puking his guts out.
Uh-huh.
But he did actually kill Franz Ferdinand. Is that what happened?
That's close. There are a lot of elements there that are...
Wrong.
No, it's a composite. It's really interesting to see the way memory works
Okay.
on a very smart person who got taught a thing a long time ago.
Okay.
Every one of those elements is there. So the beginning of the story, there's a guy named Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and he got assassinated.
He's an archduke?
Yeah,
Of
that is
what?
correct. Of Austria.
Of Austria.
The Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Which
Austria-Hungary.
is not Austria at the time. It's not like the country Austria that I think of right now.
Yeah, a little different animal. We'll talk about that. Because
Okay.
the cool thing about Franz Ferdinand, it's a dynamic, very human story. He's an interesting guy. He's a likable guy, I think. He's a very sympathetic character who people loved at the time. He's not somebody you wanted to kill if you wanted to engender sympathy for your side. People liked this dude. He's an interesting guy because of just who he was as a human, but it's also an interesting story because of what he represented. He held a very unique role, and he was a metaphor for a way things had been done for a long time. And his death didn't just start World War I, it ended the old way. It took about 4 more years, but 4 years after his death, he died in 1914. In 1918, what he represented was gone. And the new world that you and I have been born into and have lived in was born in 1918. See, that's interesting, right?
Okay, when I think archduke, I think about monarchies.
Yeah.
Is that in the ballpark?
Yeah, he was a Hapsburg. Have you heard of the Hapsburgs?
I've heard of the Hapsburg family. It makes me think of Germany, and I think Queen Elizabeth had something to do. I'm wrong here, right?
Well, no, Germany. They're a Swiss, Austrian, German family that had influence over Europe for the better part of 1,000 years.
What?
Significantly from the 1400s until 1918. They had tremendous influence. I mean, people talk about the Medicis, and you could talk about the House of Hanover or Windsor or the Tudors, or you could talk about the Plantagenets. These are all very powerful families in the history of Europe. The Merovingians or the Carolingians, but probably nobody has ever had more power as a family over more land, more people, more economics in sum total in the history of Europe, including the families of Julius Caesar or Nero. Nobody has had this kind of sheer, raw, total compound power that the Habsburg family has wielded. So yeah, they're a pretty big deal.
Okay, so I'm just going to say something right from the beginning here. So sometimes when we do a podcast and we're looking at the waveform, Tina helps us, she edits and all this kind of stuff, and we're looking at the waveform, and you can see, Destin talked this much, Matt talked this much. You and I don't purposefully do it, but we kind of do it. We kind of like try to keep that 50-50.
Yeah, like a coin or a gimmick to get people to sign up for Patreon. 50-50.
No. We try to keep that like, by the way, the 5050.com is what Matt's talking about.
What?
Yeah, who knows?
Go play.
But we try to keep that pretty even. I can tell right now that you know a lot about this topic, and I don't. You might be tempted to let me talk a lot in this just to kind of like even out the seesaw. I don't want to talk a lot. I want to learn about this stuff because this is fascinating.
Okay.
All those families that you just said, I've heard those names before. I've heard of the Tudor. I've heard of Windsor Castle, of course. Merovingian, is that what you said?
Yeah, the Merovingians were a French family from the 5th and 6th century, the first family to become Christianized. Clovis, I think, is a real famous Merovingian king.
Okay. So all these things, I've heard of them, but I don't know anything about them. And the beautiful thing about being a science/engineering guy that is doing a podcast with a history guy, humanities guy, is that I get to learn. So teach me.
Same. Okay. Well, let's start with a little bit more about the Archduke. And then let's go backwards, and we're going to spitball some stuff. This is a huge chunk of history. We're not going to cover it all. I don't know all of this off the top of my head. If you sat down with somebody and you were like, can you give me the plot summary of the first 3 Star Wars movies with Luke Skywalker and the Death Star and stuff? You're not going to get every scene exactly right, but you're going to get the big movements of the story right. That's the goal for this conversation. Fair enough?
Yeah, so familiarization.
Yeah, and I will surely screw something up because, as you can see,
you have 0 notes in front
there's
of you.
no notes. So we're just going to go for the big picture.
This is coming out of the brain. Okay.
Yeah, okay, all right. The Archduke, I said he was loved. He was beloved because for a lot of people, conservatives at the time in Europe, he represented the old world and the old ways. And those old ways of an individual's way of conceiving about themselves and where they fit in the world being tied to a family as opposed to a nation state was something that a lot of people really liked. They felt safe and secure in the idea that there are some very powerful families, and these powerful families have ancestral control or claims over big chunks of Europe. And they all work it out with intermarriage and treaties and the occasional war and whatnot. But they're our benefactor, the common person might think. They provide for us.
Is this the feudal system?
It's sort of the next thing after feudalism. So what I'm describing right now, I guess I would call the early modern and modern European state.
Okay.
Yes, it is a national state, but it is profoundly tied to notions of monarchy, imperialism, and a family. I mean, it's a monarchy. Now, in this system, there are at times various electors, dukes, and other prominent families who don't have a chance of becoming, say, an emperor or a regional king. but they have electorate power to make a person an emperor of Europe or a king of a sub-region of Europe. So there are little elements of aristocratic democracy.
So Europe, what time frame are we talking about?
We're talking about 1000 AD to 1918 today.
So they had enough unity so that there was a king of Europe?
Oh, the Holy Roman Emperor was effectively the king of Europe at times.
Okay.
He governed over more people than most emperors of Rome would have governed over with that title. But, I mean, you don't really think of the Holy Roman Empire as being that big a deal because it's basically code for Germany.
Okay.
Most of the time that it exists. The Holy Roman Empire, I think of as being founded in 800 AD, Christmas Day, with the crowning of Charlemagne by Pope Leo III. And I think of it as ending during the Napoleonic Wars, 1806, 1810. I don't remember exactly. Somewhere in the early 1800s, that's the end of the Holy Roman Empire.
So Napoleon ended it?
He did.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh, I got to learn about Napoleon at some time.
Napoleon ended a lot, dude. Roman currency, like I still have my little, silver coins, that was still being traded up until the time of Napoleon. Currency unified and was reformed under him. Holy Roman Empire, Crusader states like Edessa existed until the time of Napoleon. It's like all of that old, the very last vestiges of what Rome left behind in the classical world and the medieval world. For whatever reason, the Napoleonic Wars are when we started to make the shift towards something very, very new. More on that in a minute.
Okay.
What you need to know for this part is that the Archduke, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife, Sophia, they represented hope for conservatives who liked that system and were skeptical of the violence they thought would come out of the nationalistic mentality that the liberals of the day were embracing. So liberals liked nationalism. Conservatives tended to like the old way, the familyism, something more monarchistic.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What do you make of the term nationalism in that context?
So they want to draw political borders on a map.
Yeah.
And they want all those people to be unified under a flag.
Yes.
And
very
they
good.
don't necessarily want that to be tied to a single person in power.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. They still want to have wars and everything. Everybody likes wars. But they want to have their wars be for, a red line. And how do they draw the red lines? Like, how do you say this is France and that's Spain and that's Germany?
Mostly rivers and languages.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you draw the line between Spain and France?
Spain and France. I would say that big. I mean, this Iberian Peninsula, right?
Yeah, which is separated by the Pyrenees Mountains.
Okay.
Well, you just draw it right there. Perfect. When the Muslims invaded and they turned Spain Moorish in very distant times, they couldn't get past the Pyrenees. They got checked there in 732 AD by
Are the Pyrenees Mountains
Charles
right
Martel.
there on that little strait?
Yep. They just cover the gap, the pinch point between Spain and France is the Pyrenees.
Okay.
So two different cultures emerge there. Great.
Is that where the
perfect sense.
Basque people are?
The Basque are north and slightly west of the Pyrenees,
Okay, got it.
I think. So the French people, same kind of deal. There's a cultural unity, a linguistic unity, some historical unity, and it gets a little fuzzy as you get toward the east as to what is Switzerland and what is Germany and what is France. But you have a vague sense of where French culture would end and German culture would begin. Northern Italy. They speak German up there still to this day. I mean,
In Italy.
yeah.
Okay.
Benito Mussolini did a big Italianization campaign in northern Italy to try to sort of not to offend his buddies, the Germans, but we kind of want a unified Italy here. And it sort of took, it sort of didn't. But if you go to Bolzano in northern Italy, there's a ton of German. Everything looks German. It doesn't look super Italian. So people have an idea of where they want to draw these lines. And conservatives are really skeptical at the time of what it looks like. They think it's going to be endless war and that people are going to get boxed out and forced into the wrong compartments. Or maybe they're just afraid of the future. I don't know. So the Archduke, he's kind of a hero of the old ways. And his job is, one, he is the heir apparent to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And two, he is the inspector general of their entire military. Is that a term that still gets used in military circles? Inspector General, is that a thing?
Yeah, I've heard that term.
What do they do?
Oh, shoot. I don't know. I mean, my thought is they keep everything above board, make sure everything's up to snuff. There's nobody stealing weapons and doing weird stuff with it, stuff like that. That's my assumption. I don't know. I've never been in the military.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know this either. Well, even closer than me. But when I hear the word review in terms of like a parade or a military presentation, I get the impression that that is an inspection that the inspector general carries out. You line everybody up and he sits in like a box and he makes sure that the marching is right and in order. And if he feels good about it, he's like, yeah, that looked pretty military. So he goes to Sarajevo in Bosnia. I always struggle with the second half of this. Herzegovina. How do you say it?
I don't.
Okay, let's go with that. Fair enough. So many letters. And Sarajevo, it's an ancient city, and the people there are ethnically and culturally very different from Austria. And in the, I would say 1860s, like Americans, we forget about this part of history because we're all about the American Civil War in the 1860s. And then it's the Wild West for us. And then we don't really connect with the rest of the world on our history timeline until the Spanish-American War, which is just a little blip in 1898 that involves Cuba a little bit, and then really World War I. So we sort of take 50 years off in our history from whatever the heck was going on in Europe to worry about finishing out conquering the American West and cowboys and Indians and all of that stuff.
Licking our wounds from the American Civil War.
Well said. So in there, across the Great Sea, the emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire decides that they are going to annex Bosnia, or Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Where's that at?
It's Balkan, so if you have the boot of Italy and you go up and around the top of the boot past Venice and back down toward Greece.
On the east side.
Yes, on the east side of the, let me see, that's the Adriatic Sea. Over there, that's where all of the King's Landing was filmed in Game of Thrones. I mean, it's a beautiful place, but it's been a pretty tough run. There's been a lot of violence in Serbia, Bosnia. They used to call this Dalmatia, part of this area. So a lot of people think it's not a good idea to annex this. The emperor does it anyway, and it just by force and declaration becomes part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Well, the way things used to be, that was fairly normal. You just do some paperwork, and now this part of Europe is a part of this family's holdings because somebody married somebody or something. Nobody even really gets to know what happened. There's probably a proclamation, but in your daily life, you'd be like, okay, so I use the same currencies and continue to go to work. And when somebody, goes by and they look like a king, I should line up and be respectful.
It's not like I'm going to fight the empire, right?
Right. Who cares? Most people never would have seen their king for 2,000 years in Europe. Nobody ever saw their king. They don't know who that is. Yeah, they just farm, and you just pay your local lord. You don't really know or worry about the other stuff. Well, it didn't work out that way here. A whole lot of people in Serbia and in Bosnia-Herzegovina, they don't like the way this thing plays out.
And they have a big enough sense of the world. I can imagine if your world is small and you're paying your local lord, you don't really care. But if your world suddenly starts to, I guess the whole world starts to shrink and you start to have a bigger understanding of the world around you, then you could start to get ticked off about this kind of stuff.
Yep. And starting in about the 1870s,
telegraph,
in liberal Europe, who did political revolutionaries start to target to work them up to help them achieve revolutionary goals?
I have no idea.
Young people or old people?
I would assume young people.
Young people, yeah. And the assassins who decide to kill the Archduke in Sarajevo are very young, teenagers.
So, okay, hold on. This assassination attempt is going to take place where?
In Sarajevo.
In Bosnia.
Yeah.
Is that where?
Yeah, the lines are different, but this is historic Serbia, Bosnia. This is the area. So Serbians are the ones who are mad.
Why is he there?
He's there to do a review because he's the inspector general. So he's going to go and check out, the different troops, see what they're doing, I guess, look at them. I don't really know. That's why I was asking what an inspector general does. I don't know.
So how long has it been since they did the fancy pants paper and just made things happen to when he's going to go on this parade thing? Less than a decade?
Late 1860. It's either 1860s or 1880s.
Oh, okay.
So it's still
like 30 years.
Fairly fresh. But,
oh, wow. Okay.
It's been this way for a while. He goes on this, he's going to do a parade as well. And he's taking this procession through Sarajevo. And like you said accurately, the assassins show up And they are armed, I'm not kidding, dude, with like softball size black metal bombs with fuses, like a cartoon character would have.
Like the Swiss Family Robinson, only not coconuts.
Yes, exactly that. Ahoy, I throw at thee this metal bomb. And so a bunch of people are in the crowd when the Archduke and his wife go and check out a local bazaar and shop there. The guy who ultimately ends up killing him, a man named Gabrielo Princeps, a 19-year-old kid, he's there when the Archduke is out and about.
Who made Gabrielo ticked off at the Archduke?
I think Princeps made himself ticked off, but there's a lot of debate about this. Some people think that the existing government of Serbia had something to do with it. Who knows? They wanted to create chaos, and they succeeded in creating chaos.
This episode of No Dumb Questions is sponsored by Company Cam. We had a brief conversation with Luke earlier on an earlier episode, but Company Cam is a software tool that you can use on your phone if you run a contracting business. Like, let's say, for example, you are a person that runs a crew. You can use Company Cam to take a photo of the job and make comments and notes, and it's geotagged, and everybody on your team knows what needs to happen and what to do next. How would you say it, Matt?
How about instead of how I would say it, I'm going to go with exactly how they would say it, because they just sent me over this 100-word Company Cam blurb, which I think is amazing because it's unbelievably tight. Here we go. Company Cam, according to them, is a photo-based solution that makes it insanely easy for you and your crews to keep track of your contracting projects. Photos taken in Company Cam are automatically timestamped, sent to the cloud, saved by project location, and available to your whole team. Then you use arrows, comments, drawings, and tags to add context to your photos so everyone is on the same page. You create project timelines, photo galleries, reports, and professional before and afters right in the app. Know exactly what's happening at each job with every photo, video, and conversation in one place. So all of that to say, it seems like the obvious application for this is contractors working on projects, things where you can't always be there to look at it, but you got a bunch of people working on it. But I also feel like there are about 1 billion less obvious applications for this that could be super handy to anybody in any line of work.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of different trades that use Company Cam, whether you're a general contractor, you do HVAC, landscaping, like roofing. There's a ton of different things that you can use this for. Like if you're, I don't know, running a fencing company or a flooring company or plumbing. There's so many different things that you have to keep track of. And the beautiful thing is the photos keep a record of the job. So you can use that for on the backside as well. I think the story is so cool. They ran this roofing company. Your buddy Luke and his brothers Jake and Dane, they had this roofing company. Yep. And they're like, man, somebody has to have done this. They make software that just explains everything that's happening on the job. And there wasn't an app that did that. So Luke just made it, and it's awesome. How can people try out Company Cam, Matt?
It's cake. You go to companycam.com, and then, it's real cool if you let them know that we sent you that way. You go to, when they ask how you heard about it, you go to the podcast tab, and you enter NDQ, and then you just try it out, and they think you're going to like it, and they will get in touch with you to give you a hand with getting things set up if you need it. They're great at the hands-on support thing, and that's it.
We're grateful to Company Cam, Luke, for taking a chance with us to reach out to the No Dumb Questions audience, hoping that there'd be some people out there that want to try Company Cam. Thank you very much, Luke and team. So if you guys want to try it, go to companycam.com and just use NDQ in the little podcast drop-down when it says, how did you hear about us? That'd be awesome.
Thanks again to Company Cam for supporting the podcast, and thanks to all of you for supporting the sponsors.
The Archduke and his bride, Sophia, who, by the way, she was low-ranking nobility, and he made huge sacrifices to marry her for love. That's very endearing to a late 19th century public, right?
Okay.
Hapsburgs, they either marry within their own family, gross. They did it so much that their jaws turned into cash registers and their noses turned flat. I've got some Hapsburg coins. I'm like, dude, if I looked like that, I wouldn't put it on a coin. That's such a bad look. This looks like a misprint. It was so bad. I mean, basically, the inbreeding is what cost them. The fact that they inbred changed the whole world.
Okay.
Because they became dysfunctional. They killed off their own line trying to protect their family holdings. So here's a guy who's like, no, This lady, she's not my sister, she's not my cousin, she's not my mom, but I'm going to marry her anyway.
Let's get some new genes in here, man. I want a kid without a shovel head.
Yeah, and seriously, people make fun of Alabama. Come on. Get after the Hapsburgs. They have it coming. So he marries this lady, and it took years to get approval from all of the powers that be to even do the marriage. And in the end, it was a marriage of forfeit, which they call a morganatic marriage. Does that sound right?
I have
Do you
no
know
idea.
that term?
No.
I think it's morganatic marriage, which means, all right, you can get married as a nobleman, but it ends with you. Your children cannot hold office. Your children cannot inherit lands or titles from you. And your wife does not get to hold the title of queen or princess. Maybe, I mean, I don't keep track of the English monarchy at all, but is that the deal with Camilla? Like, isn't Charles and Camilla, right? She's not the Queen of England.
I guess. That confused me because your wife's name is Camilla.
Oh, sure.
So you can see how that confused me?
No, I'm picturing the one who's associated with the English monarchy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a different Camilla.
British monarchy.
I have no idea. That makes sense, though.
Okay. Morganatic. I think that's what it's called. It's some like super ancient term that means like a marriage in the morning.
Oh, no, dude.
What?
I mean, you got me super interested. So I'm over here Googling, and I looked up Sophie, Duchess of Hapsburg, I think who he married, and I'm looking at her death date.
Oh.
That's not good. I spoiled myself.
Oh.
This isn't good.
No.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She seems nice, too.
She seems nice.
Okay.
She's a nice lady. Everybody liked these people.
Okay.
So they go driving through Sarajevo, right? And they're supposed to have a bunch of armed soldiers with them, but people were sick or didn't show up. I don't know.
You're right. He's ugly.
Yeah, there's something real wrong with them Habsburgs.
Well, I mean, the mustache is the best thing about him, dude.
Yeah.
Seems nice, though.
Nice enough guy. Sure.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He's 50 at the time. They're driving through town, and they're way underprotected from what they had ordered and what it should have been. And the Black Hand, which is the name of the assassin group, I say again, the Black freaking Hand.
They came up with a name and everything?
That's a really good name.
It's a pretty good name for an group of assassins.
Yes. I'm intimidated.
Branding's on point.
And they nailed it.
But how would you use that? I'm with the Black Hand.
I think you just nailed it. I think that's how you do it. Right there.
Like in Treasure Island? The Black Spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like that.
All right.
It struck fear into my heart.
Okay, I'm with you.
So one of them, he grabs one of his bombs. He's a bomb thrower. You've heard that phrase before in politics or political discussion. That guy's just throwing bombs. He's a bomb thrower.
Okay.
I mean, you hear that and you're like, I mean, don't you drop bombs? Who throws bombs, really? Well, the Black Hand throws bombs. He lights one of his bombs with a little fuse. He's got his little snidely whiplash mustache. He's all gangly and teenagey, so he looks like a cartoon. And he whips the bomb at the Archduke's car as it's rolling by in Sarajevo. It bounces off, it rolls under another car, it blows up the car.
So the bomb did work.
It worked.
The bomb bounced.
He mistimed the fuse, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah. Be tough. You'd be jumpy in that
I wonder
situation.
if maybe they're like, oh no, a bomb. And he grabs it and throws it away.
That would be way better.
Yeah.
I'll heroically save us by throwing this right at our vehicle full of friends.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm the Archduke.
That's awful.
Sucks.
Yeah.
So they all get hurt, and the Archduke is, I think, mostly uninjured. He goes and does his event anyway. He has some sort of royal
banquet. He pulls a
banquet or
Teddy
something.
Roosevelt.
Yeah. He just goes.
When
good.
was Teddy Roosevelt president? When was he shot?
Just before this.
Really?
This incident is happening in 1914. Roosevelt became president in 1898 because he was McKinley's vice president. McKinley got shot at the Buffalo World Fair, summer of 98. So then Roosevelt, who was never supposed to be president, became president and turned out to be pretty good at it.
Pretty awesome, yeah.
And then he had political infighting with his own party in the mid-1900s. Taft became president. Then we get to 1914.
I just want to read this quote from Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose. That is the coolest quote ever. I'm sorry, but we're with the Archduke. Okay. So Teddy Roosevelt, 1912, takes a
It'll
bullet
take more than a couple hundred bullets to stop me, Volkov.
from the drug
That's
stopper.
exactly what it's from. Most important film of our lifetimes.
All right. So,
So
got
he
it.
goes to the thing, and then afterwards, he's like, we should go visit the people who got hurt with remember the bombing? We should go check in with them at the hospital.
After he does his talk or whatever.
Whatever it is. Yeah. Again, broad strokes. Okay, the assassin, in the meantime,
From the Black Hand.
Black Hand.
Yeah.
He is the guy who you're remembering. It wasn't Gabrielo Princip who jumped off the bridge, but the first assassin. He jumps off the bridge into shallow water, chews his outdated cyanide capsule. Yeah, he's vomiting. He's getting beaten by people. I think he got arrested and stood trial, I think. I don't know, but it's a comical scene.
Okay, so that was somebody that tried to throw the bomb.
Yeah.
That's the person that jumped off the bridge.
Yes,
Okay.
if I recall correctly.
Okay, and we're going to allow for errors in this
Thank you.
because you have no notes in front of you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the trip going back. Well, stuff starts to heat up, and there's a spook. There's a scare. They make a wrong turn on their very quick route to go visit at the hospital, the Archduke and their driver. They make a wrong turn down a closed-off street or something like that. And they're like, oh, no, that's not right at all. Well, in the midst of all of this, 19-year-old Gabrielo Princip is super sad because they didn't assassinate the Archduke. And he's just walking along in Sarajevo, minding his own business with a pistol, feeling sad that they didn't assassinate very well. And then who should turn down the street that he's on? The Archduke. And he's like, what the heck? Well, I should shoot him. And so Princip fires 2 shots, I believe.
I'm seeing it's Princip without an S at the end.
Gabrielo Princip, no S.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And he fires 2 shots and hits Sophie and hits the Archduke.
Golly.
The Archduke's last words, according to a bunch of witnesses, were not to express pain in him being shot, but he's trying to keep his wife together and saying, like, my dear Sophie, you have to live for the children. And then they both die.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
But she doesn't.
She doesn't.
She dies.
Mm-hmm.
Golly, she seemed nice.
They both seemed nice.
Although I'm, checking his Wikipedia page out, one of the things I found was him hunting. He killed a big elephant.
Who did?
The Archduke.
So he's a terrible man.
He's a terrible man. We should cancel him.
Dude, I don't want to kill a big elephant.
I don't either, but it just, I don't know.
horrible.
It just sounded like a funny thing.
Yeah. That sounds
Oh, okay.
really bad.
Here's the pistol. So
Oh,
you
they
can
still
act-
have it.
You can actually see the pistol.
Where do they have the pistol? Where do they keep that
Princip's
now?
Browning gun presented as evidence in the trial. Okay. To the courtroom, he said, I am a Yugoslav nationalist aiming for the unification of all Yugoslavs, and I do not care what form of state, but it must be free from Austria. The plan was to unite all South Slavs. It was understood that Serbia, as a free part of the South Slavs, had the moral duty to help in the unification, to be to the South Slavs as the Piedmont was to Italy. In my opinion, every Serb, Croat, and Slovene should be the enemy of Austria. And that's something he said to the courtroom. Gavrilo Princip said to the courtroom.
So he's referencing there the Italian unification that had just occurred. The German unification had just occurred as well. So he's a young man looking at the world changing, and he sees the heavy boot of oppression of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire as being the opposite of what he romantically is seeing happen in northern Germany, where Prussia and Otto von Bismarck had led the unification of the northern German states, and in Italy, where Garibaldi and Emanuele had laid down their arms to each other. Like, it looked like 2 rival forces that were going to meet in the middle, and now they're going to have to kill each other to figure out who gets to own Italy, and they don't. And so there's all of this romantic ideal of laying down our rights to form this nation state together. I mean, all very much formed and influenced by the French Revolution, the values of the American Revolution. And Princip, forgive me for putting an S on his name earlier, but I mean, he's wanting the same thing for his part of the world. And that's the kind of language that he's invoking there.
It says here that before he could fire a third time, the pistol was wrested from his hand and he was pushed to the ground. He managed to swallow a capsule of cyanide, which failed to kill him. So he tried to kill himself as well. Wow.
19 years old.
Dang.
I want to kill a dude and his wife and then choke down some cyanide and die.
Wow.
That's dark.
Very dark. Well, I mean, he's in the Black Hand. I don't know if you remember that.
I do, now that you mention it.
Is it literally called the Black Hand?
I think that's the name of the team. I look it up.
Black Hand. Yeah. The Black Hand. Wow. Okay.
I mean, it's pretty cool sounding.
A Serbian secret society with ties to Serbian military intelligence provided the conspirators with weapons and training before facilitating their re-entry into Bosnia. I tell you one thing, the cyanide guy on the Black Hand,
Hot garbage.
he is not good at his job.
Fired. How hard is it, man? How hard is it?
I know, right?
Come on. You have the self-destruct button. Make it so it works. Dude didn't even die of hanging or firing squad or anything. I think he got like tuberculosis and died when he was 22 or 23.
Really?
So it's kind of an anticlimactic ending for a dude who did not know what he was doing.
You don't think so? I mean,
There's no way he could have understood the implications at age 19 of what he was ending and what he was initiating. Those 2 gunshots right there. Some people could argue that all they did was formalize something that was already a political reality. But you could also argue that those 2 gunshots changed planet Earth, at least as we are recording, forever.
Really?
Yeah.
So all he wanted was to not be under the rule of Austria.
Which would require a reimagining of everything about how Europe does nation states, countries, kings, monarchs, democracy. I mean, it sounds simple to just be like, I just don't want to be under the boot of Austria. Okay, cool. Me neither. I don't want Austria to rule me. I really get that. But to make that happen would require a reimagining of everything. And that reimagining was not going to happen without a ridiculous, protracted, violent, boots on the ground, grisly, bloody war that just isn't going to make sense to us even 100 years later. World War I on paper makes no sense to the modern viewer.
So this is a 380. The caliber was a 380, which is the same as 9mm, just a shorter bullet. The pistol has FN on the side for Fabrique Nationale, but
What does that mean?
it's a company in Belgium that is really good at making firearms. But you don't see, nobody's saying FN anywhere in any of these articles. It's just on the pistol. It's just an unassuming pistol.
Nice catch.
That's interesting. This one little pistol changed the world in the hands of a young man that didn't understand what was going on, maybe. So I guess what happened from there? Like, how do we get from these 2 people died to World War I? Because I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people died in World War I. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, I read about that one time. Okay, to answer that question, we got to go the other way. The simple answer is there were a whole bunch of alliances, and over the course of the next few days, people started looking at their alliance sheet. Like they got out their who do we have to kill if somebody attacks other people spreadsheet and had to go through and line up the columns and be like, okay.
But this wasn't an act of war. This was an assassination of a single person. So why are people
Well, it
checking
was an
the
act
sheets?
of war. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire declares war and initiates immediate military action
Against the Black Hand.
Serbia.
Why Serbia?
I mean, the idea of attacking a terrorist organization is something that didn't exist until G.I. Joe in comic books, and then didn't exist in politics until
GWAT.
2011 or 2001, I mean.
Global War on Terror.
Right. You're not fighting a government. You're fighting ISIS. That's weird. How do you prosecute that war? I don't think that had really been thought through in 1914. You attack the region, you bring them to their knees, and you get them to bend the knee, swear fealty or whatever, and kiss the ring of regal authority once again. That's how we've done it for as long as recorded history exists in Europe. Why would we change that today because you shot a couple people? No, we're not going to negotiate. We're going to crush you, and we're going to make your leaders send forth your leaders, and they'll swear loyalty to their true emperor once again.
But the Archduke Ferdinand is not the king.
He's not. He's the heir apparent.
Ah.
Yeah, so he is set to be the king, and soon.
Is
He had
there
an
another?
uncle who was ahead of him in line? He killed himself. Rudolph? It's something like that. He was viewed as not being particularly fit for the role, and he took his own life. The Hapsburgs are already on thin ice, just in terms of their family tree. There's not much left there. So the Archduke's a pretty big deal.
Which the family tree is pretty straight.
Yeah.
It's like a telephone pole.
It's been folded back in on itself several times. Yeah. On paper, it just looks like there were a bunch of entangling alliances. That's what you get taught in school. And then eventually everybody was at war. Well, the dominoes that fall, more specifically, are the Austro-Hungarian Empire declares war on Serbia. Germany, that recently reunified northern Germany, the German Reich, the German Empire, as it was called at the time. I mean, they're ethnically, culturally, linguistically very closely tied to Hapsburg, Austria, and they throw in with them. But through the course of the last few hundred years...
Okay, stop. So does that mean that Germany were the good guys in World War I?
No.
Well, you just said...
Well, the Central Powers are the bad guys. We're not with the Austro-Hungarians on this.
Hold on.
They're
What?
the bad guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But somebody just got assassinated.
Yeah, they have a legitimate gripe. I'm not arguing that. Once you get past the assassination of the Archduke and Sophia, just forget all about your sympathies after that. That's the spark that blew up the barrel. Now we're worried about the barrel and which way the explosion's going to go. It's not about is this justified or not anymore. Chaos ensues. Here's my assessment of it. I'm just some guy. Other people might assess it differently. What's the biggest European power? Well, who are the European powers who have colonies all around the world? Just reel them off. Who are the big ones? Big players in colonialism.
The UK?
Yes, huge.
Are we talking about now or back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day. Who went and colonized the world? Whose languages are around the world?
We've got Spanish.
Huge.
Yeah. The French.
Huge.
Belgium got to the game late.
Belgium and the Dutch.
The Congo, yeah.
Yeah.
The Dutch tried. They got a little late. I don't know of any Italian colonies, are there?
Italy was connected with Ethiopia for a long time.
Oh, was it?
That connection dried up violently under Mussolini,
Okay.
but not a lot.
I would say the big ones are the Spanish and French and the UK.
Yeah,
Those-
what's the big German colony?
I don't know of one. I'm thinking about Belgium, the Congo. So
See?
Yeah. So the Germans were kind of upset about that, I guess.
There we go. Okay, but now if I ask you this follow-up question, name the 5 historic, gigantic European superpowers. Just reel them off. Who you got?
Germany.
Yes, it's on the list, right?
Yeah, Italy.
Squarely on the list.
Yeah,
Germany.
Yeah,
like going back to Roman times.
Mm-hmm.
Germany's on the list.
Yeah.
They just happen to be in a place of Habsburg-inspired political chaos right when the UK was unencumbered by that, or England at the time, then the UK in the 18th century. They were unencumbered. So Germany, they were just built wrong when the colonial frenzy happened and they got dealt out of it. How do you get back in the game? The whole world is dumping money in the 1700s and 1800s back into all of your continental rivals in Europe, but you're getting nothing. Like maybe some diamonds in Namibia. You just lost. Super bad.
Everybody started playing Risk and you were taking a nap. And then you come back to the table and everybody's getting stuff and you're not, and you're upset about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Germany peaked early. Germany peaked with the Holy Roman Empire, Charlemagne, the era after that. But there's one other huge event that happened right when the age of exploration was starting, that happened right when colonialism was starting, and that's the Protestant Reformation. What country did the Protestant Reformation happen in?
Germany.
There you go. So Germany just had not even bigger fish to fry, just other fish to fry. Germany got roped into defending the eastern part of Europe along with Poland and Hungary.
Against the Ottoman Empire?
Yeah. They were just busy, so they didn't get to do it. So the Germans are going to have this narrative. I don't know this firsthand. This is me speculating. I've never asked a German from the 1800s what they think about this. But I think they've got this narrative that says, so let me get this straight. All of y'all
Careful, Whitman.
go and conquer the world while we defend your back from the Ottomans, and we get nothing. It's a legitimate gripe.
Okay.
It's a legitimate gripe. So where there is all this intermarriage and family connection through England and Spain and Switzerland and Italy, they're all married together. It's the German people who bear the brunt of some big political and military crises during the age of colonialism. They get dealt out. A lot of historians would look at how things shook out after the assassination of the Archduke and say it was an old world way of thinking, a pre-nationalism way of thinking on the part of Germany to say, here's some chaos, And we need to reposition ourselves and reassert ourselves as the Holy Roman Emperors. I mean, we're the nation of we're the heir apparent to Rome. We call our leaders Kaiser. It's Caesar, for crying out loud. And yet, here we are taking a back seat to all of you clowns. So I think a lot of historians would say it was an opportunistic move on their part to fix some of the entangling intermarriages and mess and get Europe back in order, with Germany playing the role that it ought to play. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know. Surely there's a counter narrative to that as well. But however it works out, dude, by the time 1914 rolls around, there have been so many stupid little wars and treaties of this and treaties of that and the concordat of this to sort out the family tree problems of the Hapsburgs. That has been both a stabilizing thing for 500 years in Europe and a chaos-inducing thing for 500 years in Europe, because the fate of Europe seems to ebb and flow based on how productive the most recently powerful Habsburg couple has been in producing children and whether those children are competent. The fate of a whole continent rising and falling on that, I get why people were a little sick of it. But when it worked, for example, during the reign of Charles V, one of the most powerful Habsburg emperors, he was the emperor during the Protestant Reformation. I mean, it has a very unifying effect. And you got one emperor, one family that's controlling Spain and France and Germany and the Low Countries and Italy and Austria and Hungary. That's great. But then you run into an inbreeding crisis like during the age of Leopold, and you've got an idiot and future instability at the head of everything. I mean, the emperor has no clothes. Well, that's awfully chaotic. You don't want the fate of all of Europe being held in the hands of some bad family decision-making. The entangling alliances that exist are all deals that were made to say, okay, the daughter of this family will marry you, and that'll unify northern Germany with southern Spain. And then this marriage over here will fix the fight that's been going on between these two French regions. Oh, but now Napoleon's here. I think that cancels that one. We'll make a new one where we, I mean, get out your thumbtacks and red yarn, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible. So they don't even all know who to declare war on immediately, because it's not like it's emotional or they're mad. They got to get out the spreadsheet and go through it to figure out who they're supposed to hate and kill now.
Wow.
It's a mess.
Within a month, everything was going down, right? Within a month, the fighting started.
Yeah, not everybody was in at that point. The U.S. came in late in the game.
Why did the U.S. get involved?
That might be a story for another day. A lot of people didn't want to, but the narrative that got pitched to bring in additional belligerents like the U.S. was, this has got to be the war to end all wars. This is the war that resets all of the treaties and marriage pacts. We're trying to fix problems that were set in place in 500 AD as the Roman Empire started to flounder during, just after the reign of Justinian. We're trying to fix stuff that started to go wrong all the way back then. We've had a quest for reestablishing order in Europe in the way the Romans provided order in Europe that's gone on for a millennium and a half. People like Woodrow Wilson, the president of the United States at the time, were like, this is our chance. It's going to cost a lot of blood and a lot of treasure. It's going to be very expensive, but there's a noble quest for our young men to pursue to finally clear the decks of this old world way of thinking and embrace the modern nationalistic understanding of how the world should be divided up. Things will now be decided by true, honest, sincere democracy, not the whims of these inbred families. We'll simply do away with the trappings of the old world and build a new world. Will it cost us a lot? Yes, it will. Will it be worth it? Yes, it will. And the boys lined up and they got in the boats and they sailed to northern France and they dug trenches real deep and they lived in the trenches, and it was the worst thing humans had ever built for themselves on that scale, ever in the history of ever. And all of that hope and all of that optimism that people felt about the goodness that would come with our new nationalistic build for the planet died in those trenches. Those boys, the ones that came back, they came back screwed up. It's like a chunk of our heart as the West got destroyed over this fight and how we fought it. And I'm getting pretty serious here, but I don't think that chunk is healed. And dangerously, I think we're getting too far away from it to have living memory of it, to understand that that's even a big part of what's wrong with us. what we did to try to make this new world we wanted to live in, it was a monkey's paw. This is a trade-off we didn't understand, the value proposition. If you wreck the soul of the people who you're trying to make happy in the process of trying to make them happy, have you really succeeded? In World War I, it was 4 years, but it's going to be a long time before that societal wound on the soul of humanity heals up.
I fear that that's where we're at again now with what Russia's doing to Ukraine.
What do you mean?
I mean, what you just said. I mean, if you wreck the societal soul of the people that you're trying to make happy, I think that's happening. It's something that scares me a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these things matter. And of course, the war ended 1918.
That's the problem. The asymmetric warfare that's happening now, the war just kind of keeps going.
Yeah, like Orwell's vision of war.
Yeah.
We've always been at war.
Yeah.
With Oceania. No, we've always been at war with Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
We've always been at war with Russia.
Yeah.
Just do it forever. Eventually, it becomes baked into the economic assumptions and projections for the upcoming year, right? Like I'm mapping out my year. I'm trying to just plan my day over here. I'm a number cruncher. So we're going to have the war still, right? Okay, well, we wouldn't want to end that early. We can end that maybe a year from now when we do next quarter's budget projections. But like it gets so baked into the fabric, it soaks into the fabric of all your assumptions about everything, that what would winning even look like? When does it go away? That kind of warfare, it's bleak.
I think of the drug cartels in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Have you followed any of that?
A little bit, yeah.
I've been following that. Not crazy, but like it feels like you have these different people that are over certain regions and they're jockeying for position and power and all this kind of stuff. And they're being extremely brutal.
Yeah.
And the weapons they're starting to employ are modern. And it's like a legit shooting war. It's not cartel violence. Like we're approaching straight up war. It's wild, dude.
Okay, well, anytime we're talking about a war in this context, the question is, what is the end game?
Yeah, right.
So how does that end?
A couple of people get more power and more... I mean, eventually nation states are going to have to step in and be like, hey, we're done with this violence. And
like El Salvador.
Is that what happened?
Oh, yeah, they elected a new guy, like a hyper-authoritarian law and order guy. And he just did a roundup. Everybody, all the local police know who all the gang members are. So, yeah, we're going to suspend some civil liberties and we're just going to arrest all the gang members. Like a child's fantasy of how would you defeat gang violence? Well, we need more education. Well, one person in the room is always going to be like, just literally arrest them all. Put them on an island. Like,
yeah.
That's how they want to act. They're like, what, 1% of society's ruining it for everybody? Put them on a freaking island. That guy won in El Salvador, made Bitcoin the official currency of the country, and then arrested all of the gang members in a gigantic Friday the 13th French King-style roundup of the Knights Templar. Just kicked indoors, rounded them up, put them all in jail. You know what happened to crime, though?
What?
They went away completely. They don't have that anymore. It's unbelievable what the on-paper results are. But what do you think that my civil libertarian brain does with that? Like, oh, yeah, great. That's awesome. And now we have a new problem.
Yeah, what happens when the next person gets elected?
Well, what happens if they decide that bald dudes in their 40s who like tennis are the real threat?
Yeah.
Well, now I guess you can just arrest me even though I didn't do anything? I don't get a trial? What?
So take me back to this assassination.
Yep.
What did Princip want to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And did it actually happen?
Yes and yes. I think that's about as good as what he could have hoped for. I mean, the one thing that I think Princip would have liked to have seen happen that didn't is massive stability in Serbia. That didn't occur. I'm not sure you could say that has ever fully occurred since then. It's just a crossroads of Europe. It's a tricky place to bring stability to. I don't think he got what he wanted for Serbia, but what he wanted from the quote that you just read a little bit ago here, what he wanted was to end the old way of organizing society in Europe. And that job was about halfway done by the time of the assassination. The Italians and the Germans and the English, the British, the UK, they had all made that leap. The French, they were still trying to figure out who they wanted to be after Napoleon, flirting with having emperors still even at that point in the 1800s, late 1800s. So Europe was halfway reformed to a modern nationalistic way of thinking. and 2 bullets from Princip's little Browning and 4 years passage of time effectively completed the process. It ended most of colonialism. Almost none of the old colonial structure existed after 1918. And in 1918, the last Hapsburg emperor abdicated. He's handed the whole thing back over and was like, I'm going to play no part in what you do in rebuilding your nation.
Really?
It's yours. And that was it.
That was the end of the Habsburgs.
There might still be some. There's a joke about it on 30 Rock. Maybe like Steve Buscemi or something played a Hapsburg emperor. Was it Steve Buscemi? It was somebody. No, it was Paul Rubens. It was Pee Wee Herman that they had play the last Hapsburg in an episode of 30 Rock with Tina Fey and Alec Baldwin. And they made him up so his face was drooping off with his cash register chin. It was truly remarkable.
This episode of No Dumb Questions is brought to you by the patrons, and we've been doing a thing lately. I don't think the thing has a name, but maybe you could describe the thing, Destin?
Yeah, basically we kind of had an imaginary hat, and we drew names out of this imaginary hat, and we sent messages, and we're like, hey, would you be willing to mention via an audio recording why you support No Dumb Questions, and would you make fun of Matt on that?
I don't think we specifically
just kind of give people an idea of what you get out of being a patron. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah, most of that sounded exactly right. Almost 100% parts of it were right. Well, that's basically it. And so we've had a bunch of these come in. We've played a few of them for people, and I think they've all been absolutely fantastic. But it's my turn to pick one of these today.
Okay.
And I've got one here that has 2 files here that I'm going to play for you. And the first one says, this is the reason that we are patrons of the podcast. So here we go with that.
Hi, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Joanna.
And we've been Patreon supporters for 5 years. And I've been listening to the show since the beginning. One of the reasons I support, or we support, I should say.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is, I would say, because the internet algorithm seems to be biased to amplify anger and hate, having a podcast that exemplifies kindness, curiosity, and authenticity is encouraging and is needed. And you can tell that Matt and Destin are authentic. You can tell that by listening to the entire catalog. They haven't really changed. If anything, the only thing that has changed is that they're no longer timid or apologetic for who they are. But that's because they've built a community that they know they can be authentic with. And I don't do the internet thing, but I'm pretty sure that's really hard to do. It's a massive achievement. They should be super proud of that. And that's something worth supporting.
Wow. That's amazing.
Well, yeah, I'm blushing. I don't know. We thought this would be a good idea, but then we didn't think through, like, what do we say after we hear that?
I know, right?
Because I'm not going to be like, yep, that's us. Super authentic. And if you want to be more authentic like us, like,
go to
what do you say?
patreon.com/no-dumb-questions.
Like, I don't know. I guess I'm going to say the same thing that I've said other times that we've heard people's thoughts. This is just, that's really, really kind. And that's one of the kindest things that somebody could say about me. And thank you, Jeremiah and Joanna, for saying that and for being willing to put your names by ours. That's really cool.
I think Jeremiah must have got the wrong message, because I distinctly remember telling people to make fun of you. And I that didn't feel like that.
There's another opportunity, because there's another file that I'm going to play for you. And I have the luxury of having this email open in front of me. So I have a little bit of a hint as to what I think is about to happen.
Okay.
But I have not listened to this next file. It's hitting me cold along with you, and we are going to see what happens.
Okay, let's do it.
What now? It's music.
2 antiquity guys chilling out on the ship. Discovered a device that could record audio clips. Then they got sucked through time, recorded little nuggets.
What?
They left the tapes to be played by Destin on my live. Oddities and tasticties through time.
It's freaking awesome!
Is that a theme song?
Tasticties through time. Oddities
boner in me. It's the hugest boner I can even imagine.
Was that a Barnacles and Testicles theme song? And did it end with you screaming, "That's an incredible boner"? All right. That's great.
It was gritty. It was dirty. It had soul. I didn't see that coming. And I'm weeping.
I'm on the other end of the recording. I didn't hear it perfectly, so I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to it, but that's more what I was going for. Just you screaming weird things into a microphone over a really cool guitar riff. Yeah. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Sorry, dude. Yeah, I'm sure that's wildly out of balance for you. For me, because I'm playing the audio from my side, it just sounded magnificent. I mean, that's really well put together.
I heard a hard rocking guitar and then you laughing. That's pretty much all I heard until I heard you say, "That's an incredible boner."
Okay, yeah, that was me, but that was a different version of me from another time.
That's amazing.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was time well spent. I think we pass that along to the patrons, right? They're going to want the Barnacles and Testicles theme song.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously. Patreon.com/NoDumbQuestions. Thank you for writing that. That's amazing.
And performing it and for it rocking. And I can't wait for you, Destin, to hear it on your side. Like, it's legitimately good and fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Jeremiah and Joanna, that was above and beyond. Thank you. That was spectacular. That was funny. That was meaningful. We appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who supports the program in any way. It means the world. Thanks for making this thing happen. It exists because of you, and we're really grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I've seen, there's this guy on Twitter, Edward Hapsburg. Have you seen this guy?
No, is he Hapsburg?
Yeah. Ambassador to Hungary, to the Holy See and the Sovereign Order of Malta. So this guy's like part of the family, apparently. He doesn't have the big jaw. But I've seen him tweeting every once in a while, and it's kind of a joke. It's like, oh, if this guy ever wanted to be emperor, he would be emperor, or something like that. I never really understood the joke.
I hope he doesn't listen to this. I feel I've said some mean things about his family.
Mostly their looks. Oh, wait, Land of the Free today. Where is he from? Oh, he's in Lazio.
Okay, so Rome.
Rome? Yeah, interesting. So, 2 bullets. Change the world.
Yep.
So what's the takeaway here?
I've run the math on this a bunch of times and I gamed it out and thought, where else could he have put those 2 bullets that would have had that great an effect on society? I can't think anywhere better. If your objective was to initiate what ended up happening, well, you don't go shoot the emperor of Austria-Hungary. That would just put Franz Ferdinand on the throne. That doesn't get anything done. People love Franz Ferdinand. You don't do that. You don't shoot Taft or Wilson, presidents of the United States. That doesn't do anything. You just get a vice president, and we look back on history and just think, okay, well, then that guy was president. That doesn't do a thing. I mean, what was going on in Russia and China at the time? They're spiraling toward revolution and communism. I guess if you want to end those revolutions, then maybe shoot Lenin. I don't know. The point is, if your objective was do away with this old way of thinking, that's a very well-aimed shot.
So those are probably 2 of the most consequential bullets ever fired in the world.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's a lot to think about, man. That's heavy.
Well, here's one of the big takeaways for me. It's very murky to try to think about how we went from kings and knights and swords and whatnot to what life is like now. And without digging into stuff like this, I think we will tend to imagine that what changed between knights and swords and castles and whatnot and now is industrialization. We made factories, we made more stuff, our clothes started to look different. We thought of cars and planes and cell phones and TVs, and that's what changed. Okay, yes, but the whole structure of how we imagine ourselves and our tribe, how we imagine those to come about and where we fit and all of that, and how that relates to religion and rights and democracy and how we think of our neighbor. Is this somebody I vote against or vote with? All of that stuff is about 100 years old, 100 and change. We're just getting to the place where no one remembers, no one is alive who remembers anything about how the world was pre-World War I. Maybe there's some 110-year-old person somewhere who can remember being 2 years old, but nobody remembers. This story, for me, there's the romantic element. Oh, this couple, how sad, you have to live for the children. There's that. But it's an absolute watershed moment in terms of the history of making things how they are for you and me.
I saw a map the other day of countries that were led by some form of democracy. We're a democratic republic. But I saw the map and I was thinking, oh yeah, I wonder how old this idea is. And America was the oldest one.
How about that?
And I thought, whoa. Everybody makes fun of America for being new. And I remember the guy in Italy saying, yeah, when America was becoming a nation, we were cooking in this kitchen. He was just saying, my kitchen's older than your country. I remember thinking, yeah, we don't know anything. But then I look at the map and I'm like, most countries vote now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few countries that kind of vote, but not really.
Yeah.
They say they are, but they don't. But even the concept that they at least go through the motions to pretend like they're doing that tells you that it's a good model.
Yes.
Even if they aren't representative of the people, they still want to pretend they are because they know that's right. Because the government is made to serve the people.
Yes.
Not the other way around.
Yes.
And so is that what Princip was getting at?
No, I don't know if Princip shared values with the French revolutionaries or the American founders or the Bolsheviks. I don't know. Probably somebody does know. I can speak to the practical implications of his decision to pull that trigger twice. But you speaking to the American Revolution, and this being more or less the oldest continuous democratic republic in existence right now, really what the founders were saying, and this is just so lost on us, is we're simply rejecting the ways of the old world. It's a powder keg. It's a time bomb. It's a terrible way to govern. It's a terrible way to live. How would we build something that is proofed against a bunch of these time-tested failures? Guys, we have a big enough sample size of European history to know that these things take us off a cliff. It's a terrible idea. So why did the United States jump back into those two world wars? Okay, I think there's a lot of altruistic reasons. I'm somebody who hates war, and I agree with us being involved in World War II. That's an incredible exception for me when I look at wars throughout history, for me to be like, that was a good one, and it's good that my people were involved in that one. Generally speaking, I'm just going to be anti-war. This is dumb. This is a stupid political thing. Really, 5 members of 2 families should go out in a field and shoot each other and call it good. That's all that really needs to happen here. But they're not going to shed their blood.
The Battle of the 100?
Yeah, there you go. No, we're just going to have 600,000 or 700,000 of us do it for them. We're not going to ruin their families. They're far too precious. We'll just destroy our families. And there's new nobility, of course. It's just moneyed. It's labeled differently. It still exists. So I don't like war. I think a lot of lies force us into those positions. But World War I and World War II, that was sort of us coming along and being like, this was the inevitable thing. We had the luxury of an ocean between us and the rest of this mess. So we were able to get off the train a little quicker than the rest of us from the West. Now here we are to help out. But dude, I don't view the United States as a separate thing. I don't view this as being, well, that's European history. That is our history. Dude, I'm a Viking Scot. I'm from that continent. I can tell you the story with the names of the kids and the spouses all the way back to the last remnants of my family that were from England. I know when they came here. I know what day Granddaddy got burned. I mean, I know the day. I know the spot, the 2x2 circle on the ground where he burned to death and died during the reign of King James. That's my story. We are a colony. We're an extension of a pre-existing story, but it's not like a whole new story just starts from scratch when you get here. So for me, I view all of this as being very intertwined. We're just the split-off group that was like, hey, if you put enough distance between us and that, you kind of realize you don't really need to do any of this. We could build it differently. We could do it differently. And ultimately, those ideas informed back on our cousins on the other side of the big body of water.
Dude, this was fascinating. Thank you for taking me through this. I mean, it's challenging for me. There's a lot of information here. So can you see that some of it's landing with me and some of it I don't understand? Can you see that in me, in my body language?
Yeah, and that's what... Come on, man, that's okay. It would be like somebody explaining the first 3 Star Wars movies to you. There'd be parts of it where you'd be like, okay, I got that name. and he fought that guy, and it turned out that he was his son. Oh, it's crazy. Some of it will stick, some of the little details won't, but that's what big overviews do. They give you a feel. But if we got to the end of summarizing the story of the first 3 Star Wars movies, you'd be like, well, there's an empire and it was evil and something had to be done about it. And there wasn't really much of anybody to fight back, but some people did and it worked out. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, same thing here. You can see the problem, you can see what it evolved to, and you can see where it's at now.
This makes me think of Austria differently.
How so?
Well, I mean, I've always thought of Austria as kind of like Switzerland.
Well, it is kind of like Switzerland.
I know, but like, I don't know. It just makes me think about what all went down back then. And they were a bigger player on the stage for a long time. You know how with every country you kind of have this like drawer and you kind of throw, I'm going to throw this
them in the quaint mountain drawer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, there's like yodeling in there, you know?
Yeah, sure. Innsbruck.
Yeah.
Special pants.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. This kind of puts a lot in that drawer now.
Like they're a bigger deal.
Yeah.
They go in the bigger deal drawer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Helps me understand. And Hitler being from Austria helps me understand some stuff too.
Very much a part of this story of empire versus new nation building and all of that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, you bet. It was fun.
Two antiquity guys chilling out on a ship discovered a device that could record audio clips. Then they got sucked through time, recorded little nuggets. They left the tapes to be played by Dustin on white lines. Oddities and testicles through time. Oddities and testicles through time.